Thank you for tuning in to the newest episode of the Plain Bible Teaching Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Soker. This episode is being released on June 29th, 2023. This is the last episode for the month of June, so we're going to be doing our monthly news roundup. Rather than focusing on just one story or topic for our episode today, we're going to be briefly looking at 3 different news stories from the news this month. So this week we're talking about the decline in membership among Southern Baptists, how fewer people believe that homosexuality is moral, and the link between alcohol and cancer. For links to the stories we're talking about, as well as other related materials, check out the show notes for this episode at plainbibleteaching.com/podcast/062923. Now for our first story. Southern Baptists decline in membership, grow in attendance and baptisms. From Lifeway Research. For the second straight year, baptisms and giving increased among Southern Baptist congregations. In-person worship services and small group attendance also rebounded, but total membership and the number of churches slid. The annual church profile compiled by Lifeway Christian Resources in cooperation with Baptist state conventions paints a complicated picture for the Southern Baptist Convention, but contains some positive news. In 2022, baptisms increased by more than 16%. In-person worship attendance climbed by more than 5%. Small group attendance grew by 4%, and giving to Southern Baptist congregations ticked up by almost 2%. The total membership of the Southern Baptist Convention, however, continued its downward trajectory. The current total membership of Southern Baptist congregations is 13,223,122, down from 13,680,493 in 2021. The 457,371 members lost is the largest single-year numerical drop in more than 100 years. In total, Southern Baptist churches have suffered membership declines of about 3% annually the past 3 years. We talked about the Southern Baptist Convention on the podcast last week when we discussed their vote against women pastors. If you did not listen to that episode, it will be linked in the show notes so you can check that out. And this story here, it's not really about the Southern Baptists per se. We're really just using the statistics put together by Lifeway Research, which is connected with the SBC. But I believe this pattern that they described here in this story is generally true for many religious groups. And when I first saw this headline about attendance and all of that going up, but membership going down, I was expecting it to show that the number of people who were attending without officially becoming a member of a congregation was growing, which would make sense if the membership is declining, as you can see visualized in this chart. That would lead us to conclude that there was a lack of commitment to the local church. Well, that conclusion is accurate, this lack of commitment to the local church, but not in the way that I thought it would be, where you have increased attendance of people who are just simply not placing membership. Another chart shared in the article showed that even though worship attendance was growing and membership was decreasing, the number of members was more than triple the number of worship attenders. That means either people are members of these churches even though they rarely or never attend, or these churches have inflated membership rolls that do not reflect the number who are actively part of their local churches. Now, in reality, it could be a combination of those two things, but in either case, whichever one it is, or if it's both of them together, it reflects a lack of understanding about what is involved in local church membership. Those who become part of a local church have made a commitment to the brethren in that place, which includes assembling with the local church. The Hebrew writer said that we are not to forsake our own assembling together as is the habit of some, but encourage one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. Now, obviously there are going to be people who are shut-ins who will rarely, if ever, be able to assemble with the church. That's not by their choice. It's simply because of their health situation, and they simply cannot get out and assemble with the church. And besides those individuals, you still have the rest of the members of the congregation that from time to time, they're going to be out of town, they're going to be sick, and they're not going to be there in the assembly. But if less than a third of a church's members are present on an average assembly, then that's a problem. Maybe this is normal in the Southern Baptist Convention, maybe it's normal in some other churches, but it should not be that way in the Lord's church. The second story we're talking about today. Fewer Republicans and Democrats believe homosexuality is moral, poll finds. From Washington Stand. In the latest sign the LGBT agenda is losing support, the number of people who view same-sex relationships as morally acceptable tumbled last year, a sign people are beginning to connect the dots between legalizing same-sex marriage and indoctrinating school children in the LGBT agenda, a prominent pro-family leader says. Overall, support for homosexual relationships fell this year by 7%, the largest decrease of any of the moral issues posed by Gallup pollsters in their annual Values and Beliefs poll conducted each May. In 2023, 63% of Americans say they see nothing wrong with gay or lesbian relations. Fewer Republicans and Democrats said they found homosexual relations morally neutral this year. People are beginning to connect the dots between these agendas, says Family Research Council President Tony Perkins. We were told all this is just about live and let live, just being able to marry the one you love. Disengaged voters didn't realize that it was going to involve the indoctrination of their children, the infiltration of every media outlet in America, or that different professions will be forced to affirm these same-sex unions or go out of business. Americans are saying enough is enough, and they're pushing back. Now, this article was obviously approaching this issue from a political angle. However, I'm not bringing it up here to make a political point. Instead, I believe it's important to notice this to show how this is affecting our society. It is no secret that support for homosexuality and same-sex marriage has grown rapidly over the last 20 years or more. We talked about this a couple weeks ago in an episode about the Major League Baseball pitcher who was cut from the team after showing support for what was called an anti-LGBTQ boycott. And in that episode, we noticed a few points from an article that I wrote back in 2008, the growing acceptance of homosexuality. And both the podcast episode and that article will be linked in the show notes if you want to check those out. Now, as homosexuality grows in acceptance, I noted in that article that those who advocate for it will become more demanding, more intolerant, and eventually even more violent. Now, finally, it seems that people are realizing this. And as these individuals have become more bold, and especially as they are now targeting children, more people are waking up to the fact that this is not just about what is being done between consenting adults. They are targeting children. And they have to do this because they can't have children of their own to raise as they see fit. So they use the schools, the entertainment industry, drag queen story hours, and so-called pride parades to recruit the next generation into adopting their depraved lifestyle. Now, those who understand what the Bible teaches about this and understand that the Bible is the Word of God have been warning about this for a long time. Thankfully, more people are starting to wake up to this, and hopefully even more as we go on will see what's happening, and this movement that has been growing so fast will start to lose more and more support. Then the final story. Alcohol directly causes several types of cancer, doctors warn. From study finds, new research warns that alcohol consumption can be blamed for the development of multiple types of cancer. Moreover, the study out of Oxford University suggests that people who never drink or just have an occasional sip are 31% less likely to develop certain types of the disease. Alcohol has been linked to a range of tumors, including those of the breast, bowel, mouth, throat, and liver. Now, scientists have shown it is a lethal trigger, especially for those with specific gene mutations. These findings indicate alcohol directly causes several types of cancer, says lead researcher Dr. Becky M. of Oxford Population Health in a statement. These risks may be increased further in people with inherited low alcohol tolerability who cannot properly metabolize alcohol. Authors say the risks were greatest in participants who drank regularly, despite being more prone to the effects. Now, it seems that there's a never-ending debate among Christians about whether drinking alcohol is a sin or not. I have several articles on that topic on the Plain Bible Teaching website. I'll link to a few of those in the show notes. But for those who want to argue that Christians can drink alcohol in moderation as long as they don't get drunk, it seems that they overlook the fact that the alcohol content in drinks today is much higher than the alcohol content that existed in drinks in Bible times. Wine in the ancient world had a maximum alcohol content of around 11 to 12%. And then it was typically diluted to give it an alcohol content closer to 3% or less. Today we have much stronger drinks. Beer can have an alcohol content up to 8%, and craft beers are even higher than that. Fortified wines can be 24% alcohol content. Drinks like whiskey or rum or things like that can be up to 50%. Some drinks are even higher. So those who want to argue that the Bible allows for Christians to drink alcohol in moderation, they don't even have the same 3% alcohol content that the Bible warns about. But besides that, this study shows that the increased alcohol content is detrimental to one's health. And these are not religious organizations that are warning about this either. Instead, people in the world are noticing that avoiding alcohol is a way to avoid certain cancers and diseases. Now in 1 Timothy 5:23, Timothy may have been told to use a little wine for his stomach's sake, but that was the extent of it. A little wine, carefully done for a specific purpose, not drinking recreationally or casually or socially, but to carefully use it when necessary and at other times to avoid it. Now that's all for this week. Thank you for listening to the Plain Bible Teaching Podcast. Hope you found it to be interesting, informative, and helpful. For links to the stories we talked about, as well as other related materials, visit the show notes for this episode at plainbibleteaching.com/podcast/062923. If you have a moment to rate and review the podcast or share it with others that you think would be interested in this, then you could share that with them or leave your rating and review, and that is always appreciated. If you are listening to this, remember that we are also uploading video versions of the podcast to the Plain Bible Teaching YouTube channel. So if you prefer to watch the video, then it is available there for you. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the channel so you can see other videos that we post here from time to time. We're in the middle of a series on the book of Acts as we go through that book and various lessons on that. So if you subscribe to the channel, you see those videos along with these other ones that we post here. And if you see a news story that you think would make for a good discussion or some topic you would like to have covered here, send that to me at andy@plainbibleteaching.com. Thanks again for listening, and I hope to talk to you again next week.